Well, first of all, let me welcome you, each and every one of you. We're glad to have you here today for our now fourth meeting, fifth?
Number 4.
No, fifth. Fourth meeting. So we're glad to have each and every one of you here. We're glad to be in Macon, Georgia. As most of you know, we've tried to schedule these meetings around the state so that we're within 2 hours of anybody that wants to come and speak and have a say. And we're here to listen. As we've stated from the beginning, nothing's off the table. We want to listen to all ideas that you might have to help us to hopefully solve our funding issue that we have over at GDOT here in the state of Georgia. Before he leaves, I want to at least recognize Jim Cole, former member of the House, former member of the DOT board, and the athletic director here at Mercer University. Jim, it's glad to see you. We appreciate Jim and his service while he was in the House and on the DOT board as well, and he's doing a great job here with Mercer as they had their first football game last Thursday night, and won. And so that's a great thing, and the program's moving in the right direction, and Jim's been a vital part of that. So we appreciate his hard work. I'm going to recognize the mayor of Macon for some introductions and welcome. Mayor, if you would, I guess, is this mic always hot? And after the mayor, then we'll each introduce the committee members and let you go from there.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And Chairman Gooch, we appreciate very much your scheduling this meeting here in Macon, and members of the committee, thank you so much for coming to be with us. We appreciate your efforts. We wish you good luck. And as we present to you today, I think you'll find this to be a new and different perspective. In sum, we've got several speakers. We're going to take you from a pretty wide view involving the Piedmont Atlantic mega region, and then focus down more quickly into the immediate area of Macon, Bibb County, and Middle Georgia, where we say the metro area meets the heartland. So we've got unique transportation issues. Look forward to presenting to you this morning. I'll start off at the appropriate time, and then we have Dr. Catherine Ross from Georgia Tech and the Center for Quality Growth and Development, who will present about the Piedmont Atlantic. Then I'll come back, and then we've got several local speakers as well to talk about specific projects and the way transportation is changing, because I really think this is the critical message for you. When you try to consider what is critical transportation infrastructure, don't think about just today. What is the critical transportation infrastructure we're going to need for tomorrow? So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Mayor. At this time, we'll introduce the committee members. As always, we'll start down to the right, and Senator Lucas might have to just pass the mic down and just come down. Good gracious. Jay Roberts, and I represent District 155, just a little south of here, down in South Georgia. I represent Irwin, Ben Hill, Turner, part of Tift, and part of Coffee counties. And again, it is great to be here in Middle Georgia today, and we're happy and thankful for the hospitality that Mercer University has shown us, and look forward to hearing some good testimony and all today.
Good morning. I am Tyler Harper. I serve in the State Senate and serve the 7th Senate District, which is 10 counties in southeast Georgia. Ben Hill, Irwin, Berrien, Coffee, Atkinson, Bacon, Pierce, Ware, part of Tift, and soon to be part of Wilcox. So I serve the largest landmass in the state of Georgia by one single state legislator, and it's quite huge. But it's great to be here this morning and looking forward to testimony.
Mark Hamilton, House District 24, which begins 123 miles due north of here. So if we leave here at 12, I'll be home in 2 hours. If we leave here at 3, I'll be home in 4 hours, which is one of the reasons that I'm so excited to be on this committee. And we need to do something about this. And I think we solved all the problems at dinner last night. I'm not sure anybody has the nerve to explain what the solution was, but we did solve it. I'm very happy to be here.
Brandon Beach, Alpharetta, Georgia. I serve in District 21 in the State Senate, which is North Fulton and Cherokee County.
Good morning. I'm Valerie Clark from Gwinnett County, and I represent Lawrenceville and Swanee. And again, I'm delighted to be here also, and I am Mr. Roberts' transportation service.
Good morning. My name is Michael Sullivan. I'm President and CEO of the American Council of Engineering Companies of Georgia. But I'm here in my capacity as Chairman of the Georgia Transportation Alliance, which is the Georgia Chamber of Commerce's transportation advocacy and public policy arm. I'm here sitting by dedication in place of Chris Clark, President and CEO of the Georgia Chamber, who could not be here today.
Hello, I'm Kendall Holomach, President and CEO of the Metro Atlanta Chamber, and I want to point out the wonderful hospitality that the Mayor Macon and everyone else has shown us, and had the opportunity to meet with President Underwood recently, and I echo the comments on Mercer. It's been pretty tremendous here and for the Atlanta County.
All right, we've got a few other introductions. Nikki Randall, stand up and be seen. Nikki's in the house with us. We're glad to have her with us here today. We've also got Robert Dickey is here today. We're glad to have him as well. And Richard Smith, we're right back here. Thank you. We thank y'all for coming as well. We appreciate the members showing up and listening to have some input. We've also got Johnny Floyd, who is from the DOT board. We appreciate him. Mr. Don Grantham, where are you at? Mr. Don, and you want to say a few words? I understand you're supposed to be the welcoming party for the DOT board today. Did you know that? I was informed of that you were taking Jay Shaw's place.
But thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and you and all of the committee members. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I haven't been able to get to a couple of the other meetings, but I come from Augusta, Georgia, and from the region that passed the TIA splosh, and I'm going to tell you how good it is, because our people are happy with it. Our people are satisfied with it because we're getting work done that we never would have had we not been there. So for all you legislative members that voted on the opportunity for us to do that, I thank you very much. And I feel like we can be a guiding light for what can happen in the state of Georgia. Not necessarily the TIA is good for everyone, but I know that it is good for us for right now anyway. So I think the opportunity presents itself for the citizens to be able to make a commitment, to make a feeling as far as what they want the state of Georgia and the infrastructure and transportation to look like in the future. So I'm pleased to be here today, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. We have other members. We have Jamie Boswell with us today. He represents the 10th District, and I represent the 12th District, which a lot of you gentlemen on the panel was able to identify Coffee County and the other counties that I represent, so I'm glad to be here with them. I just understand that by getting tapped on the shoulder that Jay Shaw, former chairman, just walked in, He's normally on time, but we'll forgive him this morning. And thank y'all very much for for having this and being able to present what we think is the right thing for the state of Georgia.
And look, we look forward to coming to Augusta.
Thank you. Yes, we are. That's September the 30th, and we'll be there with arms open for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jay Shaw, our DOT board member, this is your district. Would you like to say a few words? Or?
I spoke yesterday. I'm just glad to be here today. It's a long way. I had to wait for daylight so I could see.
Well, we're glad to have you as well. And Mr. Jamie, I apologize. I didn't see you back there. You snuck in on me, sir. I apologize for that. I missed you. At this time, we're going to get right on into the testimony portion of the meeting. And Mayor, did you want to go first?
I will, and I'd like to kind of lead off and tell you a little bit about my background and kind of what I have learned. I spent 4 years on Macon City Council and followed that with 10 years in the State House of Representatives from 1993 through 2002. Did not run for re-election in 2002 and came home, was called on to run for mayor in 2007. And I've been mayor of the city of Macon for 6 years and now the consolidated government of Macon-Bibb County for 1. As mayor, I have been a very active member of the U.S. Conference of Mayors and some of the information that the U.S. Conference of Mayors has provided. One of the things that I have learned from the U.S. Conference of Mayors is the wealth and abundance of information that's out there that I think it would behoove us all to kind of look at and be a little more familiar with. So on the screen behind you, and I hate to do this to you, make you either turn around or move or whatever, this is the home screen for Smart Growth America. Smart Growth America is, I think, a national organization that has the future of our country in mind, and they paint with a big brush, and they have a lot of different programs. But Julie, if you'll kind of show them with under the programs tab all the way to the bottom is one of the organizations under the Smart Growth America umbrella, and that's Transportation for America. It has the little abbreviation of T and then the number 4, T4 America. And if you'll click on that, you'll go to the T4 America or Transportation for America website that'll take you there, and it'll come up momentarily. The Transportation for America has got a lot of information about different forms of transportation. But on the home screen, the next slide up, I think, will be coming forward and is about transportation in America and a call to action. This is a video by John Robert Smith, who is former mayor of Meridian, Mississippi, and whom I met at the Conference of Mayors. And it's about a 3-minute video, but I think it capsules a lot of what we can learn. Would you see if you can play that, Julie?
at this community, the number of businesses that are coming to our community today, a large number of them are coming for many reasons, but one of them is the convenience that transit provides in our community.
But plans like these depend on Congress keeping the nation's transportation fund in black. Right now, that's threatened. Transportation for America is helping these local leaders come together to make sure states and the federal government invest in smart, homegrown, locally driven transportation solutions. Transportation investment makes common sense. It's something that all of us, business and labor, people from all ethnic backgrounds, people from all parts of the business country, should be able to agree on.
Look at what's going on in some of the vibrant communities of our nation. We realize that transportation is essential. It connects us. It brings us together. And the cool thing about America is we're a country of loves options and choices. And so when we have more options and choices, we thrive.
The nation's economy and the future of our children and grandchildren depend on us getting this right. Join us as we help America thrive in the 21st century and beyond.
That's a little bit about the big picture and looking at transportation in America and other communities across the country. But to kind of bring it down to the southeast, I think we need to focus on the Piedmont Atlantic mega region. And there's nobody more qualified to talk about the Piedmont Atlantic mega region than Dr. Catherine Ross. And Dr. Ross, if I could ask you to come up at this point and turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor.
We don't mean to turn our back on you.
I understand. Sure. Just a moment. Thank you very much. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here. Transportation is something I've spent all of my life concerned with. So I'm excited to be in a room where everybody else agrees with me that this is really an important topic and it's top of mind for all of us. So thank you for the opportunity to have that discussion with you today. The mayor asked me to do a couple of things. Primarily was to talk about what are the kinds of things that are happening globally, locally, regionally in our state and the Southeast that help us decide what transportation funding needs to look like. What are those primary drivers? That's what I want to do today, is to set a context for you in that regard. So let's look at what some of those drivers are that influence transportation needs. When I teach my class, I say to my students, transportation is an induced demand. You don't get up in the morning and say, I can't wait to get up and get some transportation. You say, I got to go to work, I got to go to school. And so you want to minimize the cost and the disruption associated with that trip, but you want to maximize the benefit of having gotten to that job, gotten to school. So think about it in that context, because that's how we think about it. What are these things that we need to consider? Population. No matter what you hear, all the numbers that myself and a number of others have put together suggest we are going to continue to be a draw. Globally, nationally, the southeastern part of the United States is going to continue to be one of the highest, fastest growing geographies in our country. That means we have more people, more jobs, and more needs to have a better way to move around. Globalization is the big question mark in everybody's mind, from Google down to the chambers of commerce of the different states, because it's making new winners and new losers, and it turns on a dime. Those decisions are being changed as we're speaking this morning. When we leave 3 hours from now, the opportunities will again have changed. The big issue is energy. We spend a lot of time at Georgia Tech looking at alternative energies, wind power, sun power, electrical energy of all kinds. So tying an energy efficient future to our decisions is going to be very critical. Federal policy, the new transportation policy, Regrow America, I'll talk about that a little bit, because it makes it very clear that as transportation goes, so goes economic success. Those are linked in a way that's quite explicit in the upcoming and I think imminent legislation. Environment, we have a great state. We've gone a long way to keep it beautiful. That is not going to go away. The people who are moving here for that reason. So our responsibility to continue to do as good as we've done is growing, not shrinking. Technological innovation. I gave a talk about 2 weeks ago as something that the federal government was launching called the Housing Affordability Portal, a long title. Basically, it says, let me help you figure out how much money you make, where you can live, and what is the impact of transportation on that decision. Lots of people, we don't realize the second highest expenditure in all of our households is transportation. But we make decisions without knowing how that's going to impact the quality of life, what you can do, where your kids can afford to go to school. And then lastly, that thing that all of us worry about a lot, and from which our state has benefited, economic growth. The idea about what is it you have to do tomorrow to make sure you continue to be economically attractive, and absolutely transportation is the answer to continue our economic growth. So I've talked about those drivers. What is the spatial geography that makes all of those drivers work and interact together? It's a concept we're calling mega regions. I wrote a book in 2009, Mega Regions Planning for Global Competitiveness. Right now, if you look at some of the cities, they don't worry so much about the city across the border. They worry about China and what's going on in Europe, because the competitors and the way that people think about competition has changed. Mega regions is the new geography. It's the spatial geography. We live in the Piedmont Atlantic mega region, 6 states, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia. And they think about us as one economic union. These connected regions are how people around the world make decisions about investment. So you look at this whole network of car industry, the car industry that's moved here. They move because they don't care whether you have the plant in Alabama and the suppliers somewhere else. They just want to make sure they have all of the supplies they need for that industry to work. So they're less concerned about where we worry about where they pay taxes. They worry about where can I get the suppliers I need, the access I need, the mobility I need. Mega regions is that connected geography that crosses state boundaries that allows them to view it in a way beneficial to business decisions. This is the most current map of the mega regions. We developed this for the U.S. Department of Transportation. You can go to their website and look at it. And it talks about these huge 10 economic areas. The Piedmont Atlantic I emphasized so that you could see it, the 6 states I just talked about. They really drive the vast preponderance of our U.S. economy. We don't think about it in that way. Globalization, because regions, connected regions, are the economic footprint in the global economy, has forced us to conceptualize our country, our economic engines in different ways. I'll share a short story. I gave a lecture at the University of Georgia about 2 or 3 years ago, and a woman was there from Utah. And she looked at this map and she said, you know, Catherine, I don't give a whippy about a mega region. I don't see Utah. And I said to her, I said, you got up this morning and you got on the interstate. She said, yes, ma'am. I said, guess what? It didn't start in Utah. It started in New York and went all the way to California. So the benefit that you receive isn't always one you recognize immediately. But ultimately, the argument we make is that these engines connect surrounding areas and make it all work together. So these are those. Let me just talk a little bit about them. California, no surprise, 33 million people. It's a huge economic engine unto itself. Cascadia, the Northwest, and these mega regions are characterized by different industries, different populations, different infrastructure systems, different cultures. But they basically map how this concept of these emerging mega regions work. Great example of mega regions, the European Union. That's how it's organized around these geographic areas that look at the economic engines. So let me just move along. I wanted you to see this map, and then I want to answer a question. So why do we care? Why do they matter? If you look at the land area, these 10 little areas that I've talked about, huge in terms of their economic impact, only cover about 30% of the land in the U.S. But their population is about 76%, and the employment is 80% in our country. So these are areas where the economy, the population, and the jobs are really located. That's why they matter. Innovation, Fortune 500 countries, 92% of them live in these areas that I'm talking about. And what I think is really interesting, look at patents. The innovation, the new technology, all comes from these areas, about 90%. So we talk about how they view mega regions and why this is why they matter. It's why they're important. It's why if these regions don't work and these centers don't work, we don't work, Georgia doesn't work, our economy doesn't work, our country does not work. Let's talk about where we are, the Piedmont Atlantic mega region. We are at the center of that. We have been for a long while. Everyone knows that Georgia is the center of the southeastern United States. Tremendous benefit in that regard. There are new players making and loving to make claims to that central economic position that we enjoy, I think so, and enjoy living in and have enjoyed the benefits of. So I'm talking about a region that includes from Birmingham to Raleigh, fast growing. I've talked about that. And what do these regions, what do these 6 states have in common? Population, we've talked about that. Development patterns, geographic characteristics, social characteristics, our cultural preferences in the Southeast are very different than the Northwest, very different than Texas, and certainly very different from New York City. So we're linked culturally as well. Passenger and freight movement. In the Southeast, we rely very heavily on trucks. About 80% of all of our trucks, of all of our commodities move by trucks. We're captured by that. So if congestion cripples trucks, guess what? Commodities don't move. We're more vulnerable in that way than a lot of other places in the country where they have extensive use of rail to move freight. And we are a freight center. I'll talk a little bit about that in just a moment. Infrastructure linkages, and then ecologically sensitive areas. So let's think about Birmingham, Atlanta, Charlotte, and Raleigh as one huge economic engine for a moment. Wrap this idea, think about them working collectively, sum up what the economic productivity is of those 4 centers, but look at all the geographic area that they influence. So this is the idea of sort of connected region, connected economies. And so let's ask ourselves, if we all are tied to a system that relies on trucks, what kind of investments can these 4 entities, just for discussion purposes, talk about to make sure trucks move? Because we're all captured by that. We all have the same fate. I talked about our same infrastructure preferences and needs. So think about how you would sit down, and we're doing some exciting work with Birmingham now, actually doing models that connect so we can do forecasting for trucks on I-20 using the same software so we can identify common problems as they cross state lines. So let's talk about why mega regions influence transportation needs and how those are different. How investment decisions are made. I just talked about linking housing and transportation at a micro level. If I talk about it at a macro level, the old idea was it's my city, my community, my neighborhood. Mega regions say, yeah, but the problem starts before I get to you. When it gets to you, we have a bigger problem. If you start on 85 and you can't get down the southern end of that, you got a problem that rolls all the way down that interstate. So the new way talks about a connected view for solving these problems. Right now, this is an old slide, but I wanted to show you, about 13% of all U.S. total exports, we export about 13% of the U.S. total. Is that number going to go up and change? The Panama Canal is going to make new winners and new losers. The Suez Canal, new winners and new losers. And so where you have been may not be where you are if you are very conscious about the kinds of decisions that you make, because other people are making those decisions to be more competitive, to have access to those markets, and they're spending money to get that done because infrastructure costs. Diversity of transportation modes. We have a wonderful interstate system. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and when I go home now, it's kind of embarrassing the state of some of the interstates and the roads there because the tax and the ability to pay for repaving and have high-quality mobility systems has gone down so much. We don't have that situation. I'm very proud of our state in that regard. But we're heavily reliant on the automobile. We have to worry about new modes, new technologies, pedestrians, people who want to come. They want to walk. They want to be able to not have to drive everywhere they go. They want to be able to get out. They want it to be safe and green and clean and connect to employment places and social opportunities. So there's a new requirement to have different ways to travel as well as good ways with regard to safety. What do we have to sustain? Wholesale, management, transportation, and warehousing. It's interesting. If you look at some of the work that we've done, a lot of the companies and a lot of these counties our counties
We build warehousing facilities, but they don't connect to anything. They're not connected next to the interstate. They don't reflect new technologies. And so sustainable development says you have to worry about developing a warehousing network that meets a need, provides mobility, it's safe in and off the interstate, it meets the size and dimension of industries that are going to locate there. So the sustainability envelope now is very, very different. It's not just a building. It is access to that building. It is the kinds of technology that that building has in terms of cooling and heating systems. It's infinitely more sophisticated, I guess, and demanding in a way, and expensive in some ways. So freight transportation, we do a lot of work on freight in the center. I'm Deputy Director of the National Transportation Center on Productivity and Management. We're just finishing 2 great studies for the Georgia Department of Transportation, looking at the impact of the Panama Canal on commodity flow to Georgia, New Orleans, and Miami. Who's going to be competitive and why? We're trying to answer that question because freight transportation is critical to our economic growth. There's no doubt about that. Savannah is a wonderful entity for us. And if Savannah doesn't work, nothing leaves there, then the rest of the country suffers because a lot of it comes through Georgia, as we all know. So we've got to make sure we keep that truck mobility, because that's what we're relying on right now, and increase it so that rail mobility can be a part of our future as well. But right now, mega region and economic strength are linked around the whole question of freight mobility, and we have some challenges in that regard. Let me make a few concluding remarks. If there are any questions, I certainly would be happy to answer those. I really want to talk about transportation funding, and maybe I'll submit a paper later, because I think the kinds of techniques relative to what other states are looking at are something we might consider. The global economy is changing. Competition, I've just talked to you about the Panama Canal, the Suez Canal, what China's thinking about doing relative to that, the money they're going to put in that. It's going to create new winners. Those winners are going to be responsive to the mega region, that kind of a footprint that I've talked to you about. And so I wanted to spend some time raising these kinds of issues as you make really important decisions for our state and for the Southeast on both the short and the long-term basis. And that you have a very challenging, we have a very challenging set of circumstances, but great opportunities, because we've made such good investments historically. We're not starting from scratch. I'm very proud of that. My last comment will simply say to you that the decisions that you make now have to meet a number of masters. They have to make individuals happy about where they're living, the quality of life. They ought to meet the neighborhood, the community needs, the regional needs. If I look from the Atlanta metro area, great example for us. The global needs, if I look at the Southeast region, and then the national needs, if I look at what our country has to position itself to do. So thank you so much for giving me a chance to sort of frame, I hope, a complex set of circumstances and drivers, but a great opportunity to continue to move our state forward. Thank you.
Anybody? You got a question?
Can you believe that?
I can't.
Actually,
Somebody has to ask me.
Yeah, we've got some questions.
Failure.
No, we've got some questions. The one question I have, though, is Osceola wasn't in that.
Oh, now I did Utah for you. Remember that scenario I gave you back?
Yeah, I know, but
yeah,
Osceola way down there in South
No, I have a, good. I'm glad you asked that question. I have a great answer. You're going to love this.
All right, I want to hear this.
You're going to love this.
It's the transportation mecca of Georgia.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No. And I regret I didn't make this comment because I wanted to. We've done projections and population growth. We have a lot of areas in the southern part of our state that are going to be new freight depots. They're going to be important. They already are emerging. Sure, and so a number of those places, if I were to show you that map, I didn't bring it, but you'd love it. I might send it to you if you'd like it.
Yeah, I'd love to see that.
I can do that. Shows the growth in areas that have not popped up before, but are going to be very significant recipients of new population on a going forward basis. We don't have great transportation connectivity to those places. That's an issue for us.
Representative Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Ross, I have 2 questions.
Yes,
one was a clarification of something you said very early, and I couldn't understand exactly what you said. It had to do with people wake up and are concerned or whatever of the cost of transportation. Mm-hmm. Can you explain what you were talking about?
Yeah, I will.
You said the cost of transportation?
Right. I got a call, and I talked about something they call a housing affordability portal. And it basically is a piece of software integrated with a geographic information system that allows you to plop down on any place you think you'd like to live, and it gives you lots of information about that place. What kind of transportation is available? What's the cost of that transportation? What's the income structure like? What's the school structure like? Can you afford to live there? Because people make decisions and they don't put transportation costs in the budget. Sometimes it's just something we take for granted, but as you begin to pay it, it limits what you can pay for rent or for purchase. So what this does at a micro level is helps individuals figure all of those questions out pretty easily, and it's readily available.
Okay, but my question is and everybody that's heard me say this constantly in all the meetings, is that the average cost is $85 of motor fuel tax, that the average person driving 12,000 miles a year for the year, that's the average cost per year, how can we say that our cost of transportation is high?
No, what I'm saying, and let me qualify this in some ways. That portal is particularly trying to help people on the lower income who don't own cars, who still have jobs and have to figure out, if I live here, can I get to where I work? So let me qualify that particular activity with that. It really is focused on trying to help people who, a lot of them are on the lower rungs in terms of income, figure that question out, because those are often the victims, because they aren't quite cognizant of those costs. So that was
the reason I'm
my
sensitive
context.
to that is I've grown very weary of the general public thinking that they pay a huge amount of money to Georgia DOT for transportation costs, and in my opinion, and many of you, we pay very little towards that cost from a transportation infrastructure standpoint.
You and I are in 100% agreement. In fact, a lot of my friends work at Georgia DOT, and they do a fabulous job with limited resources, and they're often asked, I think, to sacrifice. They're very talented people who could be in other places. They do what they do because they love this place and they like what they do. The resources, as you know, are woefully inadequate for where we are and where we need to go in terms of maintaining what we have.
The other question I have is kind of a statement, kind of a question, but I'd like your assistance, and it's on the whole idea of regionalization.
Yeah.
I happen to live in a part of the state that is not real happy with regionalization.
Sure.
You know, we're not a member of the ARC, but we have to go to the ARC to ask for things. And so, in my opinion, in my region, my area, the reason that TIA failed as much as anything was because it was a regional approach. Because as many people have heard me say, we're going to do a bond package or a referendum in November, which has a lot of the same projects, but we're in control. We're not having other people. We heard yesterday concerns, a young lady very aptly put that the reason that she thought it didn't pass was because they were concerned that they were a donor county or city or whatever in the TIA. So I find a tremendous lack of trust for the whole regionalization concept. And how to convince me? I mean, how do we deal with that? I mean, you could say that the federal Department of Transportation is a regional approach, and look at what a dismal failure that is. And then even LaHood, in his meeting here, all he had was raise the gas tax 10 cents a gallon. There was no substance behind how we're going to fix these problems. So I find right now that we have communities that are willing to step up, and then there's others that are more regional. Help me just understand that.
I agree with you, and I talked with Secretary LaHood, whom I thought a great deal of, I should say. I was very impressed with him as the Secretary of Transportation. And I would make a couple of arguments and observations. The first is that all corridors, all regions are not created equally. I make the argument that those 10 places that I showed you ought to be in a different set of criteria. They're so important to our economy that I think we ought to figure out as a country how we're going to free them, that they ought to have a different set of requirements to meet. Some they should not be required to meet because we have to make sure they move. So I argue, and I tried to convince the Secretary of that. He sort of listened, but, you know, like all of us, he has other masters to be accountable to. So I make the argument we need to have a better understanding about our economy and transportation and how they get linked. So that if there's a hierarchy of corridors or freight corridors, that really drive our economy, let's make sure they're broken. So I would take some of the issues that you would be asked to fund and ask that they be viewed in a different way because of how important they are to our economy. That's one answer. The second answer, it seems to me, is I don't care whether you call it regionalism. I say connected places. What this mega region says and what we know is you got to get connected. However you do that, whether you do it by defining a project two cities could agree on or two regions or two counties could agree on, I think is of less concern than the fact that we get connected so we can move people and ideas and commodities in an efficient and in a competitive way to guarantee our economic success.
Thank you. When you talked about winners and losers and the new data that you're collecting, does our region turn out to be a winner or a loser with the status quo of transportation we have right now?
It's not great news. It's not great news because I've said, just like California is now very worried because as we deepen our ports now, some of those ships don't have to go to the West Coast; they can come to the East Coast. And so, how much of that and what commodities they'll carry are all up for grabs. But there's a new competitor in the room, and that's us, in terms of Savannah and Charleston and now Jacksonville. Now Jacksonville is also on the make to become a player in that regard. What I would say is, we do a lot of fairly detailed look at commodity flow. What I would say is that we tend to lose if we don't particularly improve the ability of our freight system to operate more effectively. Right now, you're stuck in congestion. We all know this. You leave Savannah, you're in trouble. You're just in trouble. And some of those, they've got to be delivered on time. There are obligations for commodities to be in a certain place. We can't guarantee that, and it's getting worse. We all drive. I don't have who's 2 hours. One of you, the example was a great example. Well, if I'm running a trucking company, maybe I can't afford a 2-hour variation. I got to know whether it's 1 o'clock or 3. So I think that's what we can't guarantee, and that's tied to congestion. And I think some ignoring of the fact that we've not kept up with how successful we've been. We've been wonderfully successful. We can't do what we've done and continue that. There's just too many other people in the Southeast, in the U.S., who would love to be where we are. And they're going to put money on the table to make it happen.
Well, I think that's a great argument that we need to, make sure we have the data.
I would love to have that opportunity.
Senator Lucas.
Have you done any studies as far as polling to see where the general public, especially in Georgia, is on funding of transportation taxes or anything else?
I'm going to get in trouble now because I see Todd sitting over there, but maybe not. We did a study about 4 years ago that basically tracked voting patterns for every county in the state of Georgia over an 8 to 10 year period. We looked at what they supported, who supported, how old they were, where they lived, what kind of a financing mechanism it was. It's a wonderful piece of work that we did. It's about 5 years old now, but it's very comprehensive. It looks at voting patterns over about a 10-year period for the whole state by county, by whether it was education, transportation that they voted up or down. We broke it down by ethnicity. So there is that. We have not looked recently, which I think that's a wonderful thing to do, to ask the people you're asking to pay, what do you think? And how would you like to move forward? And what I found is that there is a lack of trust. People will pay if you tell them what they're getting, how they're going to be better off, where it's going to go, and then you do what you told them you were going to do. Because I think there's been a disconnect. I think there is a lack of, and it's been said here, a bit of mistrust in that regard, and that's unfortunate. Absolutely. I'd like to make it available to all of you. It's very interesting. You'd be surprised.
Doctor, I just want to echo your comments about the port and Jacksonville's efforts. Geography favors us now, The port has done an extraordinary job. We've got a $1 billion capital project over the next 10 years. We revisit that every year. But the landside infrastructure is what's given us the edge and has allowed us to outstrip Charleston. When I first went on the GPA board, they were twice our size. This year, we're 2.5 times the size of Charleston. It's an extraordinary turnaround in 10 years. But, you know, getting it from one side of the world to the port, for us to handle it the way we do and get it outside the port and onto the highways is one thing. Getting it from there to the rest of the country is the real key, the critical piece, and we're not keeping up with that.
We're not, and I'll just make one quick comment. We are just finishing a study. It's under review now. We actually bought data where they put global positioning systems on trucks, so you really find out not where trucks are supposed to go, but where they really go. We track them, and what you find out is they're going places where we're going to need to make some investments. They're going places that GDOT has it marked. They kind of know, but the level at which those places are growing, whether it's Osceola or a number of other places, we can now readily identify. We got to invest in those places. That goes back to the comment I made about we got to keep our commodities flowing, our economy growing. Those are the places we got to put some new resources because they're now the new opportunity.
All right. I think, Dr. Ross, thank you so much. Great presentation. We appreciate that.
Thank you. I enjoyed it, and thank all of you for all the hard work you do for all of us all the time.
I also want to recognize Representative Patty Bentley stepped in back here. Glad to have you. And Representative James Beverly has stepped in as well. We appreciate y'all for coming as well. At this time, let's see. Are you coming back up? Not according to my outline.
Well, who's next on your outline?
Mike Dyer from the chamber, but I'll let you go ahead.
Then we'll shift around and keep you off balance a little bit, Mr. Chairman, if we can. Let me follow up very quickly with a couple of things. Number one, to talk about regionalization and how some people are more averse to regionalization than others. And I do think that we must acknowledge that this can't be a one-size-fits-all approach, and we're going to have to treat different areas of the state differently, and transportation needs in different areas of the state are different. And obviously the DOT does a wonderful job of trying to balance. They just need more resources in order to accommodate all of the different types of needs. In regard to regionalization, let me be so off base, some of you may think, is to read a short quote from a fellow named John Donne that most of you will recognize and remember as you hear it. No man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. If a clod be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less, as well as if a promontory were, as well as if any manner of thy friends or of thine were. Any man's death diminishes me, because I am involved in mankind, and therefore never sin to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. If you think you can remain separate, independent, and aloof from the problems of the transportation needs of our mega region, I urge you to think again. This has to be a collective approach. We have to work together, whether regionally or as a state or even as a region. Part of what I have done is to take the mega region pamphlet and had it reproduced. There's one at each of your places up front, and also if anybody in the audience wants to get one, there are boxes of them over there by the table. And I would be so brash as to read from the inside front cover, Hello World, talking about the Piedmont Atlanta mega region. And the third paragraph says, with more than 15 million jobs and home to some 34 million people, this burgeoning Sunbelt region is expected to grow nearly 70% by 2050 for a gain of more than 23 million people. So what I would start off saying is we have a problem now with transportation and congestion, and you ain't seen nothing yet. it's going to get worse. And if we don't get on this problem and do something about it, hence this joint study committee, hence your presence here, hence your effort to try to define what is our critical transportation infrastructure. And yes, it is roads and bridges, absolutely, no doubt about it. It is roads and bridges, but not roads and bridges alone. You have to consider transit in metropolitan areas, ways for people to get around without being in their car. You have to consider inner-city passenger rail. It is essential to the growth of our state and our region. There's a separate pamphlet over there that I thought so much of, I had it reproduced. It was a 2009 effort where Shirley Franklin, as mayor of Atlanta, and Pat McCrory, as mayor of Charlotte, North Carolina, convened a group of experts, including people from Georgia Tech and Catherine Ross, including the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, and Clemson University right outside of Greenville, South Carolina, communities that are immediately affected by this mega region and that link us all together, from Raleigh-Durham to Charlotte to Greenville to Atlanta to Birmingham. And if you noticed on one of Dr. Ross's slides, Macon, little old Macon, Georgia, is described now as a strategic portal of entry into the Piedmont Atlantic mega region because of our connection via I-16 to the port and our presence on I-75 major north-south corridor. So I urge you to take these books and look at the 2009 and see what people are saying about the need to think regionally, to think globally, to certainly plan for transportation beyond our immediate vicinity and city limits. Yes, I understand that people, all they think about when they go down to the corner and put gas in their car is, how much trouble they had getting from their house to the gas station, but they don't think about what it took to get the gasoline in the tank for them to put in their car. They don't think about the commodities that they buy or the produce that they buy, what it took to get it there. So transportation is critical. So as you consider freight transportation, as you consider passenger transportation, they are two completely different things. So I would commend those two things. I would also say that we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We don't need to sit here and wonder what alternatives we got. The state DOT has already done that. The state DOT has commissioned and been part of an HNTB study about the feasibility of high-speed passenger rail between Birmingham, Atlanta, Macon, Jacksonville, and Atlanta, Charlotte. The HNTB results that says high-speed passenger rail is feasible and affordable if you make the investment to start. I put the HNTB study over there on the table so that you can look at it. In addition, the Georgia Department of Transportation does a state rail plan as well as a strategic statewide transportation plan that they have to update biennially. There are a variety of things that they say that we need to consider. But the first thing I think we need to remember is that we are part of the nation. Whether you want to consider us in isolation or not, I think that you have to look at the national rail plan and what the plans for the country are. The plans long-term are to connect major cities, mega regions throughout the United States with passenger rail. And I think you're going to find transportation increasingly to take a three-legged stool approach. Yes, you're going to have cars and trucks, absolutely, and especially for trips of under 300 miles, you're going to throw your baggage in your car and you're going to drive. It's just too easy to do it. You can leave when you want and you can come back. But for trips that are more than 300 miles and up to 1,000 miles, you're going to increasingly look to inner-city passenger rail because of the connectivity and the improvements that are being made to inner-city passenger rail and how to get around within a city once you get there. And that would be the next thing that I want to kind of diverge and say. There's been a lot of question about our cities doing their fair share. I don't know about other cities, but I can certainly tell you that Macon-Bibb County is doing its fair share to enhance transportation within our community so that if you arrive by train, you'll be able to get around. The terminal station itself, which many of you visited last night, was rehabilitated using federal dollars and a local match grant to put it in. The transfer station and the transit authority, subsidized by the citizens of Macon, Bibb County, to help folks move around and get around in the community that live here and that come here to visit. So we're part of a national rail plan, and we have to recognize and realize that the country is moving towards some form of passenger rail. My personal preference would be that rather than Amtrak, that we have a public-private partnership with Class I railroads. Norfolk Southern is a wonderful partner for us, and I think could be an increasing partner for us if we would go to them and talk to them and see what they would do for us. We've talked extensively about the Piedmont Atlantic mega region and how we need to prepare for this growth that's coming and going to be all over us, and that is the passenger rail plan in Georgia. The state rail plan is calculated to tie into the national rail plan. And one of the things that I think is most important for you to recognize and realize is included in the state rail plan. And I put a copy of that over there on the table for you to look at. But at page 55, they say this: Macon will play a significant and central role in the advancement of the Georgia Intercity Passenger Rail Initiative to inaugurate and implement a statewide intercity passenger rail system. The initiation of the Macon-Atlanta intercity passenger rail service will be the backbone of the proposed intercity rail system for the state of Georgia. The next several pages already outline the extensions from that initial backbone between Macon and Atlanta to Macon and Albany, to Macon and Savannah, to Jacksonville, Florida, to Athens, to Columbus, to Valdosta, to Columbus, to Augusta. The intercity system is one that I think is our future, intercity passenger rail. And I'd have to tell you this, too. The page 56 of that state rail plan also includes this quote: agreement needs to be reached with the owner of the rail line, Norfolk Southern, on track improvements and operations, as well as with local governments on final station locations, station area development, and partnerships for stable and reliable operating funding. So the future is all around us. The future includes intercity passenger rail, but you're not going to be able to implement and initiate intercity passenger rail with the revenue resources that you've been making available to us. We've got to consider critical transportation infrastructure funding for the future, and that means a significant amount of money to implement and start on intercity passenger rail in our state. And it's not going to be a cheap proposition. However, from the state rail plan in Georgia, that also includes and incorporates the federal high-speed rail corridor that runs from Greenville, South Carolina to Atlanta and then turns south to Macon. The high-speed rail corridor is there, as well as all of these connecting routes that pull our cities and our communities together around the state. So I think we need to consider high-speed rail and intercity passenger rail. They're two separate things. One leads to the other. And Macon and Middle Georgia and Macon-Bibb specifically, with our strategic location, obviously we need other transportation upgrades, the I-16, I-75 interchange, the Sardis Church Road and the Segota Road connector to link I-16 and I-75 to create a transportation and logistics hub in South Bibb County, and the improvements at the Middle Georgia Regional Airport, which a lot of people put thumbs down because they think only passenger. But as you'll hear a little bit later in the program, it's an employment and economic development center with 2,000 people working at the Middle Georgia Regional Airport on maintenance, repair, and overhaul. So the transportation funding, this comes from the Georgia DOT statewide transportation plan, and it's a quote that I think all of us can leave here and take away. The quote is this: if Georgia is limited to existing road-specific funds or tolls, nearly all available dollars will be deployed for road and highway programs that address what data shows are today's worst problems or the burning platform. If additional sources can come online that can be flexed across the modes, Georgia can support future growth engines and transform the network in ways not currently possible. This means substantial investments in freight, transit, improvement in metro areas, and over time, an intercity passenger rail program that connects our state. So this is what I would say in conclusion. I think this is the time for us to be bold. I think this is the time for us to be strong and to take aggressive action for the future. I would say to you that nothing would be worse than to mess around and raise taxes a little bit and not fix the problem. Then you're going to get blamed both ways. Number one, you raised taxes. Number two, you didn't fix the problem. Instead, be bold and aggressive enough to try to raise the revenue that you're going to need to fix the transportation problem. And everybody has an opinion. I'm entitled to mine, okay? So this is just my opinion and not speaking for anybody other than me. What I would suggest to you is a statewide, state option sales tax of 1%. Levied across the state, but carving out the 3 regions that have already passed TIA. And this statewide 1% sales tax that could be passed by the General Assembly would be dedicated to transportation. People love accountability. And you've already heard, both in Tifton, when the pain index get high enough and people see where the money is going and they are reassured to know where the money is going. So a special purpose statewide state option sales tax rather than local option would give the state DOT the flexibility that it needs to implement plans across regions, not only within regions and within communities. If you exempt the 3 areas that have already voted on an extra penny sales tax, exempt them from it, but apply the rest of the state, the 1%, to the same things that apply to TIA, so that motor fuel is not in TIA. You don't pay sales tax on that special penny, but put it on the same thing. And here's your way out. You ready for this? Your legislators, you ready for this? Here's your way out. You sunset it in 8 years. So it's a tax for 8 years to raise the money that you need to pay for critical infrastructure improvements now while Washington is still run amok. You need money now to make improvements now to start. 1% for 8 years and the rest of the state, then it all sunsets together. And in 8 years, we may have a better idea of which direction we need to go and what we need to do. And perhaps Washington will have its act together by that time. But this would be an intermediate fix, the essence of a special purpose local option sales tax, but on a statewide level, initiated by the state, 1% for transportation needs, all-inclusive transportation needs that sunsets in 8 years. Those are my thoughts, and those are my opinion. I'll be glad to answer any questions about anything that we've put up there, but I go back and say that we can't look at this in isolation. We have to look at it all together. We're all part of the state of Georgia, part of the southeast region, and part of the Piedmont Atlantic mega region, whether we like it or not. Thank you very much.
Any questions? Senator Lucas.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
when you talk about that, you try on a statewide sales tax for those regions that have passed T-spots would be that?
Yes, sir. They've already got theirs, and I think for those three, for Columbus, Augusta, and the area between, I would say they get the benefit of the bargain. Number one, they got to choose their projects. Number two, they got a reduced match for local maintenance and improvement down to 10% that they would continue to get. And number three, there's also a 25% that they share for local transportation needs that wouldn't apply to the rest of the state. So I think they get the benefit of the bargain that they made, and their voters can be reassured. Boy, thank goodness we voted for it. Thank goodness we passed it when we did. Look what we got that they didn't. But for the rest of the state, you make it uniform, then the sales tax is uniform across the state. For a limited period of time, you raise the money that you need for critical transportation infrastructure.
You don't think those reasons then why penalize us? Or we pass, we need to get part of that.
I'm not sure I understood that. You're saying what now?
You don't think those reasons that pass the T-Spots, and if you come with this new deal, that to accept them would just add fuel to the fire and make them say, you know, we did it, and we want part of this too, rather than to be excluded.
No, what I just pointed out, the fact that they get the benefit of the bargain that they made. And I think they would be in a better place, to be a perfect example, by having the option to have picked the projects on their list, by enjoying the 25% local money that comes to them, and by having the reduced local maintenance and improvement grant. So, no, I don't think they would complain about it, to be perfectly honest. And I think the rest of the state, if we collectively convince them of the need and what's going to happen if we don't do it, something aggressive, something bold. And like I say, the last thing I think you want to do is vote to raise taxes and not fix the problem.
I tend to agree with Senator Lucas. I think you got some issues in those regions. They stepped up to the plate, and I don't think that we should, in essence, penalize them, and we would be looking at penalizing them because we wouldn't allow them to participate in the new revenue. That's an issue I think that we need to look at. And also, I don't think we need to look at sunset. We're trying to do 20, 30-year plan, get something in place, put something in place that's going to be out there for 10, 20, 30 years. If you sunset, you're back dealing with the same issue all over again. But, you know, I appreciate your comments and your passion and what you've given us. I appreciate all that. I mean, that's good information. We appreciate that. You know, the semantics of how we work it out, I think we'll get worked out there toward the end. But I appreciate you and appreciate what you've done and appreciate your hospitality, too. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Next on our agenda, I think, is Josh Rogers.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to say I want to thank you because, seriously, this is our fourth meeting, and you're really the first person that has come forth with a plan. Whether we agree on the plan or not, but you've thrown something out there on the table.
Well, and in response to the...
I really appreciate you throwing that out there and thinking through it and everything, because that's what we need. We really need some ideas. Yeah. We've heard a lot of we'll just raise the tax, but you obviously thought through this and whether it's the right thing or not, but we appreciate the opportunity to hear that and go through that.
Thank you, sir. And in regard to the sunset, I would say this, too. There's something to be said positive for a sunset in 8 years because the picture is changing so fast. The dynamics are changing so fast. You lock yourself into something, this gives you a chance to look again after the federal government gets its priorities in order and funding stream. Then you can adjust.
You actually think the federal government's going to get theirs in order?
Eventually, yes, sir, I do.
I hope you're right.
Yes, sir. Eventually, I do.
You're right.
Part of the plan that we're talking about involves not just inner-city passenger rail, but a walkable urban environment. And there's no better person to talk about a walkable urban environment, especially here in Macon-Bibb County, than Josh Rogers, who is the executive director of Newtown Macon. Josh?
I would also say this: we're set to try to be. We got to be out of here by no later than 12:30. I think that's what I was told because this room's going to be used for something else. So we've got a lot of people to speak. So let's try to make sure we kind of keep it within about 10 minutes at the most.
Sure. We're going to tag team. We're going to do 5 minutes each. I'm going to lead off. by talking about some of the creative stuff that Macon's doing to reduce demands on the transit network. And I think these are sort of transportation projects. So I'm going to hit 5 minutes, and then Alex Morrison, my colleague from the Urban Development Authority, is going to hit 5 minutes too. One of the things that's unique about Macon is walkability, and it's something that was built into all of Georgia's communities that were built back before the car and road network was developed. You look at Columbus, Georgia, has a walk score of 82. It's very walkable. Savannah, 71, very walkable. Augusta, 51, somewhat walkable. Macon, Georgia, 95, walker's paradise. We have about a 1 mile radius in the heart of downtown Macon where every building scores a walk score of at least 95. A 2 mile radius, it drops to about 75. What that means is that people who live in downtown Macon in that 2 mile radius have access to a life without a car. We have about 25,000 people who are employed in downtown Macon every day. And that's really a significant impact on the transit network. The other thing, it's just to give you an example, the Dannenberg Loft apartment building that came online just this past year with rents from $680 to $1,800 a month has a walk score of 97. One of my friends, it's a walker's paradise. One of my friends has a condo in Manhattan, walk score 98, and the rent's nowhere near $680 a month. But it really puts it on scale of other places in the United States where you can live without dependence on a car. There aren't that many left anymore, and even in the state of Georgia, Macon's got the highest walk scores of any of our urban communities. The reason that's so significant is because a lot of Americans are looking for a walkable lifestyle, and I think capitalizing on that sentiment that's already in the marketplace and maximizing the number of people we have living in walkable urban centers is a significant and viable tactic for reducing demands on the road network, and it's something that we're pursuing all out here in Macon. The National Association of Realtors reported last year that 60% of people who are looking for houses prefer a neighborhood with a mix of houses, stores, and other businesses within walking distance. It's revolutionary in the housing marketplace. And this happened in the past 10 years where people went from looking for 3-car garages on top of that list to walkability in their neighborhood. Now, the federal and state transportation planners have been involved with alternative transportation projects for many years. In fact, in 1996, Macon started developing the Ocmulgee Heritage Trail, which is now 11 miles long, and over $15 million has been invested in this transit network that connects our downtown areas and eventually all the way up north to Amerson River Park. We've also really worked hard on loft funding, on making lofts available. One of the things we know is that loft demand far outstrips our ability to put it on the market. Markets just change faster than we've adapted. So in 2012, Macon issued $5 million in bonds. We loaned the bonds to loft developers, and what we've been able to do is get a little bit closer to meeting the demand. The market study says that Macon could put 235 units of loft housing a year into service for 5 years, for over 1,000 units in 5 years. And that makes a significant difference in converting people from car commuters to people who walk everywhere. So far we've made loans of $3.7 million, and that's leveraged total project value of $14.4 million in loft construction in downtown Macon, a 5-to-1 ratio of bonds to private developers' money. We've taken 100,000 square feet of vacant space, and we've gotten 103 loft apartments into that previously vacant space and 14 new storefronts. The other benefits are that because this is such a unique amenity for Georgia, 57 of the people who moved into those loft apartments moved from outside of our region into the middle of downtown Macon, and we're generating additional property tax. Because the property tax is coming from elevated values of stuff that was already on the digest, it's pure profit in property tax. So that's one of the ways, excuse me, that Macon is really capitalizing on walkability as a transportation amenity. The other thing is we've got a lot more potential. Of the vacant space we've got left, stuff's trading about $25 a square foot. Once it's occupied in the projects that we've completed, it's worth $135 a square foot. So the opportunity for Macon going forward is we've got at least 1 million square feet left. We know we have an additional 1,000 units of demand that we can absorb. And so we could increase our total property tax receipts each year by 22% by trading on the walkability asset of downtown Macon to get additional lofts online. I'm going to turn it over to Alex, who's going to tell you a little bit about how the future planning for how we're going to even increase the walkability and bikeability of downtown Macon.
Thank you, Josh. And as you see, this is titled Lessons from Copenhagen. Just last week, I was actually in Copenhagen, Denmark. So fresh off a plane with some of this knowledge in my head. It was a study trip to actually look at some of these critical infrastructure needs in our urban areas and how Copenhagen went from being a dead harbor town to being the hub of Scandinavia's knowledge economy. And what they did was they took a good look at themselves and realized that they had a vacant, auto-centric urban core that they needed people to be in and be active in, and they focused heavily on bicycle infrastructure. And how they did that was a multifaceted way. By looking at it more than just bike lanes, and this is what we end up doing a lot here, is we throw in a bike lane, but it's nothing more than a door lane or something else, but it's a network. And this is why this is a critical infrastructure need for this state and these hub cities, is that we have to look at ourselves as not just a way to get people from their homes to their jobs, but to enjoy a more leisurely atmosphere in their lives and to be able to get from point A to point B through multi-modes of transit. What every city that's going to look at bicycle infrastructure needs is a minimum grid, the ability to connect multiple nodes of town, multiple amenities to the city center. And in Macon, we actually have the luxury, as Josh pointed out, that we have a very walkable, bikeable urban core right now. But once you get out of that 1 mile radius, it's really hard to get there through any means other than a automobile. So you have to be able to provide that minimum grid. So that's why multiple modes are necessary. You have to have the transit options, and the transit has to be friendly to bikes. This is actually one of our buses here in Macon. So we're a little bit there, but there has to be a way for people to walk and feel comfortable walking throughout the neighborhood. Your parks and everything have to be connected. And what that means is you're actually growing your economy through multiple sectors. You're getting more people engaged in the economy at multiple levels because people have greater access to job areas. But you can't put in infrastructure that is at the expense of others. And these are some examples of people biking on sidewalks because there's not adequate lanes and the sidewalk itself isn't very wide for pedestrian access. Or in the worst case scenario, you put in a bike lane, but it's also the bus stop. So it interrupts the flow of both modes of transit, making them both less favorable than the single occupant vehicle. And the bottom picture is one where Copenhagen themselves had to decide between multi-modes of infrastructure. That used to be their trolley line. Now it's a linear park running through one of the richer neighborhoods of their town that's connected by bike lanes and great pedestrian ways. And ultimately, what their planning decisions are about is people. They took the industrial harbor and made it a park that in 7 years went from sewage to a place where people can swim. And it's a place where people, like families, interact. There are retail nodes right along the harbor front. Their parks have means for everybody to play. Some of you will recognize this guy. That's Sam Welburn, who was with us, and I think he enjoyed the trip as well. And this is a park that shows everything that they do in Copenhagen in one node. This is what they call the Red Square. Yes, it is a Russian-themed square, but it's a park that's in a social housing area that has a bicycle superhighway running through it. This is an old decommissioned rail line that they made a bicycle network that runs through about 5 different municipalities outside of Copenhagen, and but multiple ways for people to play in the park, focusing it all on the people that are there. So what is the Copenhagen Way? What did they do? Every major arterial road has at least 4 feet wide of separated by grade bike lane. That is something that is integral to every planning effort that they have from the municipal level. And then the pedestrian ways are also grade separated by additional 2 feet of grade and usually some type of tree alley from the area so that everyone has their realm. Bus stops are always removed from the bikeways, and it's very fun when you start biking through it. you realize that the bike lane veers out, bows out, so you give plenty of clearance between the buses and the bikes. The bike grid has those super highways to get people moving, and it has really decreased congestion by 40%. They reduced their congestion of their highways just by investing in this bicycle infrastructure. And next week, they're actually launching their first bus rapid transit line through their town, which is very exciting for them, and it's a beautiful system. We got to see it. And so what are our major lessons for us is that transportation infrastructure must focus on people as well as cars, not just moving people quickly, but moving people, humans, comfortably through the system. Then that means multiple nodes are necessary to create a robust economy. One thing we can never know is what the real bicycle demand is until we make it safe for people to get on one. And so that's why you have to focus on that, not just adding sharrows, but actually grade separating people from the bike lane. And this was from the state of Denmark, what they found out for the cost to society from their investment is that for every kilometer biked by a person in Copenhagen, society saved 17 cents for transportation costs, and in healthcare costs 97 cents, as opposed to a cost of about 27 cents for getting in a car and traveling that same kilometer. So a net loss to society of 27 cents. And what they found out was that there was a discretionary spending increase. By taking the money that's being spent on transit and cars and putting it into their pocket to spend, it had that net gross impact on the economy. So this is still very fresh in my mind, but it was just a great lesson for us and how we might be able to affect some of these changes that we're all talking about and making this region and our hub cities that much more of a better place to live. So I thank you for this time.
Thank you. Any questions? All right. Now, are we going to go by mine or yours? All right, well, let's just keep with yours then. Let's go with Rick Jones. Mike, I don't know how in the world you just got shunned, but you were supposed to be up at the top, but you're going to have to talk with the mayor. Okay. All right, Rick, thank you.
Hey, I'm Rick Jones, and kind of give you a little bit of introduction as to who I am. I've been in the transportation business now for about 36 years, and I've been all over the world, and I've been all over this country. And I've got to say that Macon, Georgia has been a real blessing to me. And what I've seen here with all the support that we've had from the local community, from the legislators, from the mayor, from the commissioners, we've been able to do a lot. But we're challenged, just as everybody is in transportation. And we're not going to tell you anything different than anybody else tells you. The proof's in the pudding, though. And where we've gotten to is very good places. And we've been able to take a system that was failing and made it into a system that is now above water and that is operational, and that we can brag about an on-time performance of better than 90%, and we'll hold our heads up with anybody in the country in terms of what the service level is. But we are stymied by where we are and where we need to get. We're still operating a system that's 30, 40 years old, and that's the routes that we're operating. What you see behind you is one of the projects that you can get funded through transportation funds from a federal level. You're seeing the terminal station as it was and as it is. You guys got to see some of it last night, and these are some of the things that we've been able to do for it with transportation funds. Some of this that you'll see coming up are ideas that we would like to take it to in the future. So, but we need help to do it, and we can only go so far with it. Now, we started out a number of years ago with a visit with the mayor and his vision of a region and that had a transportation system that would support the entire region. And he asked us how we could do that. We were limited with the authority that we had. Our authority was for Macon-Bibb County in and outside for our citizens going to and from jobs. And so we went to our legislature, and Nikki Randall was our champion for this and presented a bill before the House, and I think it was House Bill 1260, I believe. And it was passed, and we became not just a Macon-Bibb County authority, not just a regional authority, but a state authority, so that we can operate within the whole state of Georgia. If we're invited into any county or any region that needs us in there, we can come in, and if they will support us with a match, then we can come in with what federal funding that they have appropriated for them and operate systems. So we have grown into now a system that's capable of handling systems throughout the state. So it's been a real blessing to me to be here and see these kind of growths. Now, also, what we've been able to do is to increase service to the limits of what we've done, but we've got to go forward with it. So we are we're where we need to be, but we need to get a little bit further down the line. So we've got some challenges, and we need to go forward with it. We had a challenge that was presented to us by the base. Warner Robins Air Force Base came to us and asked us if we could help them in the Robins Air Force Base area. Those of you I know that Robins Air Force Base is the largest employer in the state of Georgia, and it covers the whole middle Georgia region. There's a truly regional need that was there, and our citizens in Macon needed a way to get to and from Robins Air Force Base, so we opened that route up. And by opening that route up, we started out with 6 people riding. Now we have up to 4,000 people a month that are riding to and from Robins Air Force Base. The demand is there, but the challenge is how do you continue to operate it as it goes forward? It is an economic factor, as we talked before. The citizens that ride those buses now have discretionary income that they can spend within the community. They spend $120 a month on a monthly pass. The federal government reimburses them that entire $120, so there's no cost for them to get to and from jobs from Macon, Bibb County, Georgia, into Robins Air Force Base. So there's a real big plus for that, and we want to continue that service if it's at all possible. I do want to recognize that there have been a lot of people working with us. Those people in Warner Robins that have helped us develop the system and make it successful. I know I saw Jessica Bird here, and she's with the city of Warner Robins, and she's been very supportive in this program as we go forward. John Pugh is with Robins Air Force Base, and we've established not only the Robins route, but we've also established a park and ride lot with the support of the City Council of Warner Robins to bring our citizens that work at Geico, the largest employer in Macon-Bibb County, that live in Warner Robins and in Houston County and surrounding counties into Geico, and to give them that opportunity to come in too. So we want to encourage you guys to continue to support us. But we need help from the state, and you guys are the ones that can make that happen for us. So I want to end this so that you can keep on going. If there's any questions, please ask me.
Thank you. Nikki, how in the world did you slip that through? Yeah, I did. No, I probably voted against it. It was Nikki. No. What you want to do? You want to keep going with yours, or you want to go?
Why don't we let Mike go, and then he can let Pat come right behind him, or vice versa. Pat's up. He's got the information. Yeah, I heard the Chamber of Commerce on economic development.
Okay. All right, Mr. Pat Topping.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Pat Topping, and I'm the economic developer here in Bibb County. And I've been in this business for 24 years, and I've been very, very lucky to spend 16 of it here in Bibb County. I spent 3 years with my friend Mark Hamilton up in Forsyth County. This was before he got into the political arena, right on the cusp of his decision. But we want to talk about the economics of logistics here in Bibb County.
You know, we've got 18 warehouse distribution centers here with over 6.2 million square feet of space. In addition to that, we've got 790 logistics-enabled companies. These are manufacturing centers that have a logistics component, or freight companies or freight forwarders. Together, those two groups employ 15,600 people here in Bibb County. And Bibb County has just under 100,000 total employment. So logistics represents 16% of our total workforce. Truck traffic and rail traffic, truck traffic on goods that are shipped into Bibb County from outside the state and from Bibb County going outside the state. 123 trucks annually leave from Bibb County going outside the state with a value of about $5 billion. About 103,000 trucks annually come in the state, into Bibb County from outside the state at a value of a little over $5.5 billion.
Let me ask you something real quick on that. Where are the majority of the trucks headed outside of it? Or are they headed toward the coast over to the ports or north, south? I mean, do you even know? I mean, just
it's a good question. And
curious.
Yeah, I don't have those numbers.
Okay.
But Paige Cipollone, I'm sure with the Centers of Innovation, can get those for us. Well, the next one is rail, and I think a lot of our rail traffic is port related. We've got rail traffic. Norfolk Southern has one of the largest switching yards on the East Coast here, Brosnan Yard. And out of Brosnan Yard and out of Bibb County in general, there's over 3,200 rail cars a year that leave here. And there's about 2,400 rail cars a year that come in from outside the state. So, you know, logistics is a big part of Bibb County. And we haven't even spoken about our airport, Middle Georgia Regional Airport. And another opportunity we have is with Robbins Air Force Base Airport. And so, you know, logistics is critical to us, and transportation is critical to logistics. And I think the mayor has identified some projects that the chamber and the community have supported. Any questions?
Right there at the end, are we going to hear those project lists? I'm just curious from your perspective, Pat, you know, from a transportation funding, from an economic development with the distribution and logistics, what would be the number one thing that would help so that you could continue to ask to start up and relocate those distribution centers here?
We survey our businesses every 2 years, and that's one of the questions we ask. What are the transportation needs? I-16 and I-75 improvements come up all the time. You know, it's and you know, the port right now is doing a tremendous amount of business, and it can only increase with the Panama Canal. So a lot of that traffic is coming through Macon, and what we'd like to do is figure out a way for a lot of that traffic to stop here in Macon.
Okay. All right. Thank you
sir.
so much, Mr. Pat. All right. Are you going to speak now, Mr. Mike, or are you going to? Okay. Y'all just got this thing all messed up here. That's okay.
Good morning. I'm Doug Fayor. I am the airport manager for the Middle Georgia Regional Airport and the Macon Downtown Airport. Yes, we have two airports in Macon-Bibb County. And today I'd like to primarily talk to you about Middle Georgia Regional Airport. But before I do so, just to give you a little bit of information about Downtown Airport, is located close to our central business district and primarily general aviation traffic that takes place there. And Middle Georgia Regional Airport is our other airport, and that's what I'll speak to you mainly about today, is a FAA-certified Part 139 commercial service airport. Annually, we're inspected by the FAA to maintain that certification, and which allows us to fly provide commercial service at our airport. We also have a lot of general aviation at the airport. And as the mayor mentioned earlier, a lot of times we like to grade airports by the number of commercial or passenger enplanements they have, or what type of commercial activity takes place as far as the airlines go. But I'd like to share with you today that there's more that happens at our airport than just commercial service. We have maintenance, repair, and overhaul and aircraft manufacturing. With this airport, the Middle Georgia Regional Airport, is home to aircraft manufacturing and maintenance industry leaders, Boeing, Bombardier, and Temco. I'm sure you're familiar that Boeing is downsizing, but we also have Bombardier, which services the aircraft that they manufacture, primarily the CRJ. They employ roughly 300 people, pretty close to 300 people, and expressed that there's a good potential for a need to expand in the near future. And we also have Temco, which provides heavy maintenance for United Airlines. They have a United Airlines contract. We have 757s and 767s flying into the airport on a regular basis to get maintenance, heavy maintenance. These three entities together at the time of our last impact study, just these three, not the entire airport, support roughly 1,100 jobs at the airport. This is taken from the Georgia Department of Transportation's last economic impact study. It shows that the Middle Georgia Regional Airport has a total economic output of nearly $200 million per year. Now I want to talk to you about passenger employment so you get a good idea of how important these entities are to us. When you look at our numbers from 2000, you see that passenger employments were pushing 35,000 employments per year. And you see a dramatic decline starting around 2004 and continued pretty heavy to 2009. During this period of time, we had a lot of mergers with airlines. Hurricane Katrina took place and fuel prices went up, and airlines changed the way they did things. ASA left Macon in 2008, and you see a considerable drop. This was very damaging to the airport. We lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in parking revenues, concession revenues, lease agreements. And you can see that's any business that would go through that's fairly devastating. So, but let me skip to this slide here, which you can't see, unfortunately, for some reason. If you could see it, it is, I apologize. It would show you that the Middle Georgia Regional Airport, now think just for a moment, no commercial service at the time of this economic impact study. Where would you think the Middle Georgia Regional Airport would fare amongst other commercial airports within the state? Fourth, behind Atlanta, Savannah, and Augusta, at $200 million annual economic impact, we're behind Augusta. That's with absolutely no commercial service at all. So I tell you that so I can express to you how important these entities are that we have. Maintenance, repair, and overhaul, aircraft manufacturing is our bread and butter. That's what we do very well. We can do it very well because we're close to Atlanta. I would imagine that United Airlines thought about that when they selected Temco as a place to have maintenance done. 80 miles, 80-mile flight in a 767 is fairly inexpensive, relatively speaking. So our location helps us attract businesses like this. Again, aircraft manufacturing overhaul, maintenance, repair, and overhaul, and aircraft manufacturing is our bread and butter. However, commercial air service is important. I'll touch on that in just a moment. But I also want to show you the impact. We talked about the $200 million annual impact. I want to talk about drill down into that a little further and talk about the impact to us locally. When we look at the taxes that are collected on aircraft that are based here, for lack of a better term, in Macon-Bibb County. You'll see on the chart there that we collect $735,000 a year that's spread out amongst the state. A little over $3,000 goes to the state a year. $400,000 goes to education. Nearly $60,000 goes to fire. And nearly $270,000 goes to our county. This is because we have aircraft based in our county, and we look to continue to grow that and make it attractive for folks to base their planes in Macon-Bibb County. We talk about investment in our airports, investment in the system. We looked at the economic impact, and we look at a runway extension. And a lot of times folks ask why do you want to extend the runway? Is there really a need to do that? Well, we talked about Temco earlier and the fact that they have 767s and 757s that are coming in for maintenance. There's no passengers on board, and it's light on fuel. So 6,500-foot runway is fairly adequate for that. But when you factor in that these planes, again, are coming in for maintenance, that may have reverse thruster issues or anti-skid braking issues, they may want a little more than 6,500 feet. United Airlines has expressed to us that they're in support of us extending the runway. It would allow them to bring additional aircraft here that they may not bring here because of the fact that the aircraft are coming in under maintenance for a maintenance issue. It gives us the opportunity to provide support to our tenants that are already there. Like I just said, Temco. It's attractive to potential tenants. Other aircraft manufacturers that may want to come in and have a need for a longer runway, or aircraft maintenance, repair, and overhaul entity that may provide service for a larger type aircraft that could relocate here. So it's attractive for potential tenants. It also, the runway the extension is a $30 million investment, and that is a sizable amount of investment. But is it worth it when you can keep the entities that you have on your airport, or keep them in the state of Georgia? When you can attract entities that are going to contribute more to that economic impact, when you look at it from that perspective, it's a great investment. Funding for airports, and I'm going really quickly just for time's sake, but majority of our funding that comes from the FAA is AIP funding, Airport Improvement Program funding. And primarily, we have to focus on airport safety, capacity, security, or environmental concern projects. Let me give you an example. What that means is they won't pay for everything. So we have to find other sources of funding to cover the expenses of the airport. For example, primary runways, secondary runways. At each airport we have 2 runways. The FAA will pay for anything related to your primary runway, but not your secondary runway. So we have to find other sources of funding to cover those expenses. There's other needs that airports have that aren't being met through the FAA. Hangar development, bulk hangar construction, heavy maintenance repair for the facilities and infrastructures. These are places that we have to go to the state and to try to find help to keep our airport, our economic engine, running smoothly and attractive for those that are there and those who want to come there. On the chart, you'll see that over the years, the funding for Georgia airport funding had gone down until last year, 2002. And I'd like to applaud the state. They have increased that in 2013 to $10.3 million. So the state is going to be able to help us a lot more. I think that that's a great direction to be headed, and I encourage us to continue increasing that. The airports in the state of Georgia need this funding to maintain the infrastructure that they have. I just wanted to share one last slide with you. This is the statewide economic impact. We talked about the $200 million that Middle Georgia Regional Airport provides. This was taken from the DOT's Economic Impact Study of 2011. And as you can see, Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, $58.2 billion economic output for the state. And then you look at all the other airports, combine the commercial service and general aviation airports, and you got $4.4 billion. $4.4 billion economic impact. We have to keep these engines running. We have to invest in our airports. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Chairman Burns, you got to get, and this mic don't work. So.
I'm not sure of the. Yes, to aircraft ownership in Georgia, from what I've understand and researched, is a little bit more expensive. Fuel, the taxes on fuel are very unique, and it's one of the most complicated processes, as I understand. I don't know all the details on that, but that is one of the biggest expenses. As far as the taxes go, I could go back to the slide and show you it's based off the value of the aircraft. And depending on what the rates are for each county, that expense could vary. Yes, sir.
That's more or less ad valorem tax, is what I can understand, versus a lot of states exempt them from ad valorem taxes, and Georgia does not. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike, you're next. I'm not going to let the mayor take this. I've been wanting to hear from you all day.
Well, I just kind of want to summarize what you've already heard. You've heard my colleagues talk about downtown and what they're doing there to make downtown a more livable community, a more walkable community. You've already seen the value that Mercer University brings to our community. In addition to Mercer, total, we've got 22,000 college students that are getting their education here in Macon every day. You heard about the economic development in terms of Pat Topping from the MEDC and Doug for the airport. We have an opportunity here in Macon to really make an impact from an economic development standpoint, not only for us locally, but regionally here in Middle Georgia and also for the state. With the expansion of the port, that opens up great opportunity. We're positioned well to take advantage of that. Things have to come here. They have to move through here. Infrastructure is a major need for ours. As you guys probably know, too, we've got a significant segment of our population that lives in poverty. And a lot of folks that are unemployed, that don't have jobs. We need to go out and find work for folks. We need to find ways to retain our college graduates here in Middle Georgia. We've got to find ways to raise a living for those folks that don't have that opportunity. Economic development is the answer for us. We've got a chance with our South Bibb, North Houston opportunity. We're working with them to create the logistics and freight distribution center opportunity we have out there. We also have the opportunity to work with some of our other counties in terms of going in and developing sites that we can recruit big companies to come in here and locate. Those sites for these other counties that are a little bit poorer than we are, they need infrastructure help. They need roads to get access to these sites. And so I look for y'all to help us with that. I wish I had a silver bullet that could tell you what the answer is. I don't have that. I'm not a transportation expert. But I will tell you that we did pass TIA in Bibb County. We're all about transportation. We know how important that is. And we're willing to do whatever it takes to make that happen and help you all be successful. So thank you for being with us today. We appreciate that.
Thank you. Any questions? All right. You going to pick this one, Mayor, or am I going to pick this one? All right. You mean, okay. All right. Well, then let's go back up here to Dalen Martin from Jones County.
Good evening, panel. Committee, Dalen Martin, Jones County. Just wanted to share this with you. From Hartford, Connecticut originally. At age 8, had a paper route, and I could ride my bike and toss papers through the city. Between ages 9 and 11, I could actually collect bottles and cans and ride from Hartford, Connecticut to Windsor Locks on a bike and recycle my cans and get a little check as a child. We could also ride across our bridges. In Jones County, we don't have that same luxury, and even the connectivity between Jones County and Bibb County isn't exactly ideal for walking, let alone cycling. In the county itself, we have about $2 million that we allocate towards public works, and the bulk of that goes towards road resurfacing and construction. We're roughly $500,000 for LMIG, which isn't a lot. I think in Bibb County, it's probably maybe a tenth of the budget, but we have about 390 square miles, which makes us almost equivalent in land mass. When you think about that, we need all the resources that we can get from the state because we know what's going on in the federal government. We'd like you all to consider, looking at that fourth penny, moving it towards transportation. We'd also like to look at increasing the motor fuel tax to, of course, help sustainability and also look at the potential it has in our counties. We're small. We're only 29,000 people, but when we don't get a T-Splosh because it may not pass locally or even in the region, it heavily impacts us in our ability to continue to support the infrastructure and growth in our county. Our bridges, we have a number of bridges that we've had some challenges with, and I thank Preston Hawkins, who has been with the state working on roads, and of course Bubba taking us up to the state to help us secure additional funds, because when we spend $180,000 on a bridge, that's a lot. And we still have wooden bridges in Jones County, by the way. Come take a ride if you dare. All right. And with all that being said, we're excited about what you guys are doing and the ability to convene people and listening to us. But we strongly urge you to, consider moving that fourth penny. Look at the motor fuel tax, indexing it, of course, to inflation, and look at bonds and other options to help support our initiatives. Because again, we're small, but a lot of resources come through our town. Gray Highway, which is 129. Highway 49, Highway 57, Highway 18, and 22 all come through our little hub. And you can't get to 20 from Macon without driving through Jones County. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Martin? Thank you. We appreciate you. Gator Hodges from Butts County. Not here? Okay. We'll skip him then. And you are going to have to forgive me on this. But Wani, I was about to say, Jay, did you change your last name? You got up about that time? Okay. We can skip that one too. All right, Miss LaToya Jones. All right. We're getting through these quick. Mr. Robert Hyatt. Hyatt? Is that how you say it?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. It's Hyatt, like the hotel, just spelled a little differently. I'm wearing two hats today. I'm the Governmental Services Director with the Three Rivers Regional Commission right up the road. And I'm also the President of the Georgia Transit Association. And back in 2008, I presented to the Transportation Funding Committee at the time to help make the case for transit in Georgia. And at that time, as the General Assembly was looking at different transportation funding options, the case that we made was to ask the General Assembly to consider in any future legislation to help us cover operating costs. And that was put into the TIA legislation and is currently in place today. What I would like to say is that our needs with transit in this state are still the same. We do need to continue to find ways for capital and operating funding for all of our systems. We have transit in 122 of Georgia's counties, so we have some form of transit in most of the state. The way that the state is growing, millennials want to live somewhere where there's other ways to get around in a car. There's another discussion going on about aging in place, and people want to be able to stay in their communities. But when they do that, they need to have access to transportation alternatives. So what I would just like to ask is whether or not the legislature takes up some type of a TIA renewal or looks at any other funding sources. I would simply ask that please consider ensuring that transit capital and operating ability is in that legislation to help meet our growing transit needs. From the Three Rivers side, we've heard a lot about freight and logistics today, and I certainly agree with everything that's been said here. We have been talking about a project that came out of the state freight study back in 2010. It's listed in there as a Macon-LaGrange connector. We call it the Georgia Export-Import Highway for short. And to make a long story short, that particular project would have a large benefit for the middle portion of the state, help the Atlanta area with some congestion relief by helping trucks that don't need to go to Atlanta to go around Atlanta, because that particular project would tie into other segments of the state freight corridor and effectively create a multi-interstate Atlanta bypass. So if we have a lot of freight volume that increases as the port grows as anticipated, it's coming up the interstate, making the Chattanooga are the two busiest segments of the interstate. If you want some estimates, look at possibly doubling or tripling the freight volumes that we're looking at today. And if all that's going to go up I-75, then as was mentioned earlier, we've got to be able to move freight around. And so that was a very good return on investment for the state that was identified in that study. I think it was 18 to 1. But right now we don't have the funding to build it until 2040. So short of doing something of that type, then as the freight comes in, and as was mentioned earlier, we have a land problem, and we've got to figure out how to distribute that freight on the rail and the highway network, and the Georgia Export-Import Highway would be a good project to do that. Thank you for your time.
Hold on, Chairman Hamilton.
Thank you. Wear your Georgia Transit Association hat for a moment.
Yes,
sir. Do you know or do you have access that you could provide, I call it cost of ridership, some kind of split out, and I know it depends on the area, it depends on the mode and those type of things, but if you had access to that, I would appreciate you getting that for us. I think one of the challenges we have is that, we've heard numbers anywhere from $750 million to $1 billion a year needed for basically asphalt, roads and bridges. Obviously, the transit is a very big part of these discussions also. So I'd like to get a better idea of what the cost structure is on that.
yes, sir. There was and I can submit it to the committee. There was a recent study released that looked at cost efficiency, and actually Georgia's rural and small urban transit systems rank very high nationwide. But I'll be happy to send that.
And I'm talking dollars or percentages on the various modes.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Get it to my right hand back there, Andrea. She can get it out to the committee,
all right,
and so that everybody can get it.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Jamie, did you want to speak?
Decided to come in.
Come on up here and speak, Mr. Jamie. Sure. I skipped you earlier, so you.
No.
I apologize, sir.
We were at the SASTO meeting last couple of weeks ago, and it was one part of the country, the Northwest, that's doing what they call rider user charge or road user charge, and there's a device you can attach to any vehicle. It doesn't track where you are, but you can track it to about 99%. I mean, you can attach it to 99% of the vehicles, and it'll have a mileage figure per year. And I think there are 3 or 4 or 5 states out in the Northwest that are doing this on a preliminary basis to figure out if it works. And it's strictly a user charge.
Oregon's one of them.
That's correct. I think Washington, Oregon, I think a couple more. But I think the technology is there to do it. Now, somebody smarter than I am has got to sit down and figure out how it works within each state. And I thought, instead of charging 100% for what you drive, you might charge 85 or 90%, assuming that part is out of the state. But anyway, I just think that's something that, that maybe somebody can look into and see if it works. And another thing is, we're talking about freight, and these 2 freight corridors we are working on, the 17 on the east side and 27 on the west side. We all know that the economic engine in this state is that port and the airport. And if we got product coming out of the port, that is not going to the airport, we don't want to get on 285. So we're working on those 2 projects, and hopefully they'll be finished, and that will alleviate some of our problems.
Oregon's got 3 factors in there. They actually have a straight fee, and then they have a miles driven, and it has a GPS monitoring. It only tracks what you drive within the state of Oregon. Then they've got the other device that tracks what you drive everywhere, so you pay outside if you're concerned about people knowing where you're at or whatever with the GPS side of it. You can go to the other, but you pay no matter where you drive. So they've had an interesting study going on for several years and all out there. Mr. Johnny, hey, you're the only one I hadn't let speak off the DOT board. You want to speak today? You want to say a few words?
It's good to have all of you come into Middle Georgia. Macon, Bibb County is the center of the state. We have a lot going on right here in Macon and the surrounding counties. Just south of us, we have one of the largest employers in Robbins Air Force Base. We have Interstate 16 coming in from the port. We have Interstate 75 and 475 connecting there. We just completed the 4-lane from Augusta to Columbus through Macon. We have a lot going on. They just consolidated governments. They are getting themselves in good shape to face the growth that's coming this way and in the state. We need to do all we can to help them with the infrastructure to continue to grow and to see that we look after our second-tier cities and help them to grow and prosper and get in. Appreciate y'all coming down.
Thank you, Mr. Johnny. Former member of the House as well. Do we have anybody else that's out there that has not signed up that wanted to speak today? Come on up. Please introduce yourself and let us know who you're with, or if you're here as a citizen, we're glad to have you from that standpoint as well.
It depends on which hat you want me to wear.
You wear whichever one you want to.
My name's Terrell Hudson. I've been a county commissioner down in Dooley County for about 29 years. I have proven to myself over the last 90 days I know a lot less about financing county government than I thought I did going through our budget process. Thank y'all for being here. We appreciate what y'all are trying to do, and we trust that you're going to come up with some good solutions. I've heard lots of people with good ideas here this morning. I'm going to approach this from a little bit different standpoint than a planning situation. I'm chairman of the policy group with Georgia Association of Regional Commissions. I'm chairman of one of the three River Valley RCs that did pass the TIA, and thank y'all for that opportunity. It was an opportunity, and I frankly don't know how Dooley County would have gotten through our budget process without TIA, the local share that comes to us. I happen to serve on the County Commissioners Association Board of Managers. Good to see some of our guys around here today. But the thing I do every day to make a living is I farm, and I run some heavy equipment. And by virtue of that, I have to keep a CDL. I have to get out on the highways and byways and lowways of Georgia. And we have a partnership there that we've heard experts here, people that are more than 50 miles from home with a briefcase and a laptop, say we got the best there is in the Southeast, and I agree with that. But we need to make it better. The two nightmares for somebody with a CDL is for somebody to say, you got to go through Atlanta, or if you're in Middle Georgia, you got to go through the I-16, I-75 conjunction out here and get on 129. I promise you, a truck driver, if he can avoid either of those two places, he's gone. But unfortunately, many of them can't. There are too many trucks out there. I have to run too many trucks myself. And there are ways that we could make some changes to reduce that number. And the feds can make some changes to reduce that number, like adding axles. Most of us are afraid of what's commonly known as a wiggle wagon, that being two trailers behind one truck. But you can go to Canada and you can load a truck up to the point that it weighs 165,000 pounds and travel legally on their highways. They do it with multiple axles and a lot of other things. But in my humble opinion, y'all need to be looking at that as well as where we're going to build the roads, where we're going to extend the airports, how much money we're going to put in public transportation. That's something that's the quick fix, putting more weight on the trucks. There's a safety component to it, but I can stop a truck today that weighs 80,000 pounds in a third less distance than I could 20 years ago. The technology is there that's happening. So while y'all are looking at this whole deal, please look at doing something to reduce the number of trucks on the road, or the need for the number of trucks that's on the road. And thank you for the opportunity to address you.
Let me ask you a question. Of course, I think you probably just gave Todd a heart attack over there with DOT. But in all,
one of my good friends.
Yeah. But Mr. Terrell, in all sincerity, you know, earlier today we heard about the 1 cent. And hypothetically, if that's the route that we chose to go, Senator Lucas brought up the question. What do you think, as a commissioner, as somebody that lives within one of the regions that passed the TIA, as far as the 1 cent statewide sales tax, if that's the route we went, would you or would you not want to be exempt from that penny? And and this may be I put you on the spot too quick. You don't have the time to think about it. But you know, that's something that I think both Senator Lucas and probably every single one of us up here on this committee would like to know from y'all's standpoint in those regions that passed it, where y'all would come down on that at. Because we have said, or I have said, and most everybody has said from the time, we want to do what we can to help protect those 3 regions that stepped forward and passed it. We don't want to do anything to hurt you. All we want to do is try to help you. And to look at it from that standpoint, what do you think?
Having just heard the solution this morning, and this is strictly off the cuff.
Sure, absolutely, and I understand that.
The 3 regions that pass TIA are primarily the lowest economically developed regions in the state. You've basically got Columbus on one side and Augusta on the other side, and that's our drivers. That's economic development in the region. It was my opinion going in. I didn't have a vote, but it was my opinion we needed to do statewide 1%, split it up. DOT knows where it needs to go, but we didn't have that opportunity. We knew we had local needs that had to be met. We knew we had regional needs that need to be met, and all of us gave up something on the roundtables to come up with the list we came up with. If I remember right, Todd he probably got a better memory than I have, but we cut back to a third of what the requests were. So we've got substantially more need than what the TIA will take care of. So having said that, I'm glad y'all got to come up with the answer, not me.
Well, and that's why we get paid the big bucks. But so in other words, from your standpoint, and I realize we put you on the spot here, and you don't have a lot of time to think about it, but y'all would still like to be included in that penny as well, to make sure. I mean, I understand where the mayor was coming from and what he was trying to say and all, but from y'all's standpoint too, you need more than what you're getting right now to be able to meet all your needs within that region in your area, because as you said, you cut back those projects. There's a lot of projects that's still out there that's probably on the step and all that need to be done, that are important to your area and to those regions. So probably, from what I just gathered from you, unless I'm wrong, y'all would still want to be included.
My gut is that would be the case, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. I appreciate you, sir. Sure. Come on up.
Let me put on my other hat.
Which hat's that? The chairman or the?
No, I'm gonna put on the
citizen?
The
Come on up.
Well, we passed that 1 cent also. And I appreciate what the gentleman just said and also what the mayor said. But I think what we've got to look at is that if this is going to be a statewide tax, then yes, those regions should be included in a percentage of that recipient. If it is not a statewide tax, then those funds should go back to the places from where they were collected.
Sure.
So my point is right now that's what we're presently doing. And another thing you might consider is that under the present tier, 25% being discretionary funds get to go to the cities and to the counties that have never had any funding whatsoever to pave roads, dirt roads that they still have. There's some of these counties right now that are getting those funds, particularly from our region, and able to do work that they never dreamed of doing. So I think it's a little further out as far as you're thinking and what we need to do, other than just say, let's go put a tax statewide.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Come on back up. We always like to hear from farmers. You know that.
The sunset part of it, we got needs too far out. There doesn't need to be a sunset in there, in my opinion.
Okay. Thank you.
Y'all got anything else?
I think you're good. Miss Patty wants to speak, though, and I'm going to sure recognize her.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and my colleagues. I represent House District 139, which includes 3 of those counties in Region 8 that passed the Transportation SPLOST, Taylor, Macon, and Dooley counties. And as Commissioner Hudson mentioned, those counties are very small, very fortunate to have those additional funding from the T-SPLOST. So yes, please keep us included, I would say, and please, as the discussion continues, make sure that you have, if you will, have folks at the table that are part of those regions, just as you did here this morning. That was very good, and I would just ask that you continue to consider those regions that did pass the T-SPLOST, because they certainly need more additional money, especially in the counties that I represent. My home county, Taylor, cities such as Reynolds and Butler, very small. The entire county population is less than 9,000. So we need a lot of help down there. So I thank you for this.
Thank you, Representative Finley. We appreciate you coming out today as well. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am. Come on up, Ms. Vaughn.
Representative Roberts and team, this is my second meeting. I've driven down from Atlanta, a Georgia native, and a resident from Macon in my earlier years. So what I think is going to be a value out of this, we talk a lot about the money, but what's going to be a value is we're starting to come together with strategic discussion about transportation for Georgia. And that's going to be really valuable because that's going to hit the ground on what people are going to want to know about as we articulate what is Georgia's vision for transportation. I want to thank Dr. Ross for kicking off this meeting. That was good stuff for us to hear in the mega picture. But to me, what's going to be very valuable, the funding is going to be very complex. We all know that. There's needs, there's wants, there's people that have skin in the game, there's others that are trying to get there, there's strategy. But this is going to really be a great way, and I'm seeing it through GTA, thank you, Mike, and our team, that we're going to start being able to articulate to the public what is our strategic plan, and then I think we're going to have some opportunities for funding that are going to be very unique. So I congratulate you all for going around the state. It was not a bad drive for me this morning. If you leave Marietta at 6:30, you can get here. If you just try not to put your pedal to 80 miles an hour, you're going to be okay. I think we're going to get back, Mr. Hamilton. But, you know, Macon's getting connected to our Atlanta. There's not a lot of mileage between us. And I just think that we have a real opportunity to be upbeat about the strategic discussions here. And I just want to thank everybody on the GDOT board. Let me just share this with you because you need to know this, and I'm going to make sure it gets into the Atlanta Business Chronicle. The GDOT board chairman, Jay Shaw, met with us last week at Perimeter. We had a showcase of our board members, and they get to see the projects that are happening at the Perimeter Center. And all of these wonderful board members stood up and said, it's about one Georgia. We're not here talking about that I live in South Georgia and I shouldn't be investing in something in Atlanta. This is about strategic economic opportunity for our state. And that was very revelational, to be among corporate leaders and very strong business leaders who stood up and said, this is the way we go. This is the way we make choices. I want to thank all of our board members from GDOT who are here today for doing that and setting that tone. I think it's a new direction, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you. She's always energetic. We always like to hear from her. She's always upbeat, and that's a good thing. But and we do have a wonderful GDOT board. I want to say that with them sitting here today. They do a great job of working together, working with the legislature, the governor, and we've got a great commissioner. I'm going to say that. He does a fine job. So with that, anybody else, speak now or forever hold your peace. Did you want to say something, Bubba? You are absolutely right now. It's appropriate. Are you making a motion to adjourn? I mean, that's go ahead. A few times. Wait a minute. Dr. Ross wanted to, I think she wanted to say
just one final comment. We've done a lot of work for a number of years that I think would be helpful if we could pass some of that to the committee.
We'd love for you to.
With your permission, I'd like to pull some of that together. We'll shrink it down so it won't tax too much of your time, but I think it might be helpful. And a lot of it you pay for already through Georgia DOT or U.S. DOT. So if you would like, I'd like to have the opportunity to share that with you.
We would love to. You can get with our assistants back there to take care of us.
All right,
and get it to them, and then we'll make sure that everybody gets it. But that was actually one of the things that Chairman Gooch was saying that he wanted. So we're glad that you've offered that up.
Oh,
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you so much.
Chairman Gooch. You can. Absolutely.
I just saw David standing in the back. You know, we have gridlock in Middle Georgia. Any of you that go to the Bulldog Nation on Saturday knows the issue you have in Gray, Georgia. Small town in Gray where all these feeder systems comes in. But North Creek bypass is currently under construction. So that means you will be alleviated from some of that downtown traffic. And a lot of that is freight moving through. That just gridlocks the small town of Gray, where these feed arteries come in. But I saw David Snell standing in the back of his country putting that bypass through. And we're grateful to GDOT that they saw the wisdom in bringing this much needed relief to traffic congestion in this area.
We want to know that we get a special deal because of the fact that you're such a Bulldog fan, it gets you to and from the games quicker.
Motive to move back.
That's right. That's right. He has a motor to move faster. But we do thank him as well. He is the president. I think you're still this year, aren't you, the president? Georgia Highway Contractor. So we're glad to have him here as well. Chairman Gooch.
Thank you all for coming. We appreciate it. We're starting to see some ideas come to the surface. We're beginning to talk about the future, and that's what it's all about. So keep the ideas coming. Let's get together in a couple of weeks and do it again.
We'll be in Augusta, Savannah, Blue Ridge, and Rome for the next 4 meetings. So
Halfway there.
we're halfway there. If y'all know of anybody, encourage them to attend in those areas that might have any ideas. We're looking for suggestions. We're looking for ideas. That's what this is all about. As we've said time and time again, nothing's off the table. If you've got a way, an innovative way, thinking outside the box, we want to hear it. But other than that, any other comments, questions from Chairman Hamilton? You having a fit. You want to make sure you get through that traffic, aren't you? Yeah. With that being said, again, thank you, Mercer. Thank you, Macon. We are adjourned.
Hey, bud.